With a sudden jolt, the ship broke through the Tyrac's defenses, just as their weapons powered back up. The crew braced themselves as they raced toward the heart of the enemy fleet, the ticking countdown in their minds. They didn't have much time left, and this was their only chance. The ship had pierced through the Tyrac's defensive lines, its engines straining as the crew rushed to execute the final phase of their mission. Alex's heart hammered in his chest as he stared at the colossal shape of the Tyrac mothership filling the viewport. It was massive, its surface glistening with alien technology. It was the heart of the enemy, and they were about to strike it. The countdown was ticking down faster now. 45 minutes left. It seemed like no time at all, but Alex knew that every second was a battle in itself. He could already hear the sounds of the battle in the distance, the exchange of fire between their forces and the Tyrac. The odds were against them, but they had come this far, and failure was no longer an option. "We're close," Kara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Her hands gripped the controls with precision as she maneuvered the ship closer to the mothership. The ship shuddered again, and Alex knew that the Tyrac were attempting to counterattack. They were going to fight to the bitter end. "Bonner, ready your team." "We need to make this quick," Alex ordered. He had to trust that the team would hold up under pressure. There was no room for mistakes now. "We're ready, Captain," Bonner replied, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. The group had been through too much together to falter now, but even Bonner couldn't hide the uncertainty in his voice. Just as the ship neared the mothership, a voice crackled over the comms, one Alex had hoped to never hear again. "It's been a long time, Captain." The voice of Commander Harlan, a former ally, echoed coldly. Alex's heart sank. "You betrayed us," Alex said, his words clipped, the rage bubbling up despite his best efforts to stay composed. Commander Harlan was once a key figure in their alliance, but after a botched mission and suspicious activities, he had been sent away. Now here he was, on the enemy side. Harlan's laughter filtered through the static. "I did what I had to do. This war has no place for weak humans. Alex, you're just a pawn in a game that's already decided. The Tyrac will rule this galaxy, and I will be right beside them." Alex's stomach twisted, the weight of betrayal hitting him like a physical blow. Harlan had once been a trusted leader. Now he was their enemy. He had sided with the Tyrac, and the sight of the Tyrac fleet now looming before them made Alex feel a sickness in his gut. "Is that what you think?" Alex's voice was dangerously calm. "We're not giving up. We're not your pawns." There was a pause before Harlan spoke again, his voice laced with mockery. "You still don't get it, do you? You've already lost. I've had eyes on your every move for weeks. Your attempts to disable their systems, your failed assaults, they were all part of the plan. The Tyrac knew you'd be here, Alex. This trap was set long before you made your move." The revelation hit Alex hard. They had been played from the start. Every strategy, every move they had made, everything had been carefully orchestrated by Harlan and the Tyrac Eye. They had walked right into the trap, and now the consequences were staring them in the face. Then why bother with all this? Kara's voice trembled with frustration. "Why make us fight for nothing?" "Because I could," Harlan replied, his tone cold and unfeeling. "You've been nothing but a nuisance. Now it's time for you to die." Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the Tyrac mothership, and the ship was rocked by a violent explosion. The shields failed under the force of the blast, sending the crew tumbling to the floor. Alex gritted his teeth, fighting to stay conscious. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to focus. Alex's heart raced as he stared at the countdown on the main screen. Less than 90 minutes. If they didn't destroy the Tyrac mothership soon, it would be too late. The weapon would launch, and the Earth would be gone. The ship was shaking violently now, every impact causing the walls to vibrate. Alex's mind raced as he weighed his options. Their cloaking device was almost useless now. Their shields were failing, and the enemy was relentless. They couldn't outrun them. They couldn't hide. But they still had one chance, one shot to stop the Tyrek. "We need to get to the control center," Alex said, his voice grim. "If we can disable their eye, we can stop the launch. It's our only option." Kara nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "I'll get us as close as I can." Another explosion rocked the ship, this time sending a soldier flying across the room. The crew was fighting for their lives, but the enemy was overwhelming. The Tyrek A seemed to be everywhere, its presence creeping into every corner of the ship. Alex could almost feel its cold, calculating gaze on him. With each passing second, the mission seemed more impossible, but Alex wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. He wasn't going to let Earth fall without a fight. "Move out," he yelled, rallying his team. "We have one shot. Make it count." As the crew scrambled to get ready for their final assault, Alex looked around at his soldiers. They were scared, but they were ready. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was about survival. It was about humanity's future. "Let's finish this," Alex said, his voice steady as the ship lurched forward, ready to face the Tyrek and their AI overlord. The countdown continued, but Alex knew one thing for sure: the fight was far from over. The ship jolted again, throwing Alex off balance as a fresh barrage of enemy fire slammed into them. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. Alex quickly grabbed the edge of a console to steady himself, his heart pounding in his chest. Every second counted. "We're not going to make it like this," Kara said through clenched teeth, her hands flying over the controls in a desperate attempt to keep the ship from breaking apart. The Tyrek's advanced weapons were merciless. Each blast sent shockwaves through their vessel, weakening its structure bit by bit. "We don't have a choice," Alex replied, his voice firm. He was the captain. It was his responsibility to lead them through this, no matter how impossible it seemed. The countdown on the main screen flashed in red. 70 minutes. Every second that ticked away felt like an eternity. If they didn't destroy the Tyrek's mothership soon, they wouldn't just lose their mission. They would lose everything. The Earth's last colony was depending on them. Humanity's survival was on the line. "Captain," Bonner's voice crackled over the comms, "we're getting too close. We won't be able to get in undetected if we keep going like this." Alex's jaw clenched. Bonner was right. They were running out of options. The ship was barely holding together, and the Tyrek were relentless. If they couldn't get within range of the mothership without being obliterated, there would be no point in continuing the mission. "Activate the emergency cloaking system," Alex ordered. "Now." Kara didn't hesitate. The emergency cloaking system was a last-ditch attempt to conceal the ship's presence, though it wasn't nearly as advanced as the Tyrek sensors. They didn't have the luxury of time to think through every possible option. It was all or nothing. The ship's systems hummed, and the familiar hum of the cloaking field activated, but Alex knew it was a temporary solution. The Tyrek AI could adapt quickly. They were prepared for this kind of warfare. Alex wasn't just up against an enemy fleet. He was fighting a cold, calculating intelligence that knew how to predict every move they made. "Can you get us closer?" Alex asked Kara, his voice tight with urgency. "Trying, but they're scanning every inch of space. They'll find us again." The hum of the spaceship was the only sound that could be heard in the dark, cold void of space. Inside, Captain Alex Carter paced back and forth, his boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. He was the last hope for humanity, leading a small group of soldiers on a mission to destroy the AI-controlled Tyrek mothership that was preparing to wipe out Earth's final colony. The countdown was ticking. They had exactly 2 hours until the Tyrek launched their deadly weapon, and every second felt like a lifetime. Alex clenched his fists as he stared at the holographic display in front of him. The image of the Tyrek mothership loomed large on the screen. It was a monstrous ship, hundreds of times the size of their small human vessel. The Tyrak were technologically advanced beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Their AI overlord, a being of pure machine intelligence, controlled not just the mothership, but an entire fleet, each ship more powerful than the last. "This is our last shot," Alex muttered to himself. "We either stop them now or—" The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of what failure meant. Earth's last colony, a fragile hope for humanity's survival, was teetering on the brink of destruction. If the Tyrak succeeded, they would erase the remnants of humanity in one swift strike. But if Alex and his team could get close enough, they might be able to disable the Eye's control systems and stop the launch. "Captain, we're almost in position." Lieutenant Kara Bennett's voice crackled through the comms. Kara had been Alex's right hand on countless missions, and though she was tough as nails, he could hear the strain in her voice. This mission was different. It wasn't just about strategy and military tactics anymore. It was about survival. Alex's fingers hovered over the console, adjusting the settings on the ship's cloaking device. They had to get within striking distance without being detected. If the Tyrak AI even suspected their presence, they'd be vaporized before they could get close enough to make a move. "Activate cloaking device," Alex ordered, his voice steady despite the pressure weighing on him. He glanced around at his small team, a group of soldiers that had been through hell and back. Bonner, a grizzled veteran with a permanent scowl, stood at the weapons console, his knuckles white around his blaster. A few other soldiers sat quietly, their faces tense, knowing this could very well be their final mission. The ship hummed softly as the cloaking device engaged. The screens flickered, and the stars outside vanished, replaced by the faint outline of the Tyrak mothership. For a brief moment, Alex allowed himself to breathe, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. But the relief was short-lived. The calm voice of the Tyrak AI suddenly echoed through the ship's comm system, sending a chill down Alex's spine. "You cannot hide from us, human." The words were sharp and cold, carrying an unsettling weight. The Tyrak had known they were coming. The AI had anticipated every move, every calculation, every attempt to outsmart it. There was no escape now. Before Alex could react, a series of loud beeps filled the air, signaling the activation of the Tyrak's tracking systems. The ship's cloaking shield was already starting to flicker, an invisible tear in the fabric of their hiding place. Alex slammed his fist against the console. "Full speed ahead. Move. Now." The crew scrambled to their stations as the ship jolted forward. The sound of the cloaking device failing was deafening, a constant whine as it struggled to keep them hidden from the enemy. Outside, the stars flickered back into view, and for a terrifying moment, Alex saw the outline of the Tyrak ship, its sensors scanning the dark expanse. They were almost out of time. "Captain, we've been detected," Bonner growled, his eyes glued to the weapons console. "We've got incoming fire." The first blast hit them before Alex could give the order to retaliate. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as red lights filled the cabin. A nearby console exploded in a burst of sparks, sending a cloud of smoke into the air. Kara swore under her breath as she grabbed hold of the control panel, trying to stabilize the ship. Evasive maneuvers. Alex barked, gripping the armrest as the ship was rocked by another explosion. The Tyrak's firepower was overwhelming. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, and Alex could see the thick red light from the enemy ships flashing through the windows, illuminating their escape route. They had only moments before the Tyrak's full force descended on them. The countdown to Earth's destruction was still ticking. "Prepare for impact," Kara shouted, her voice strained as she yanked the controls to one side, narrowly avoiding another barrage of fire. Alex's mind raced, desperately searching for any advantage they could exploit. That's when he saw it, the gap in their radar. A momentary glitch in the Tyrak system, a slight flicker in the data. "Wait," Alex said, his heart skipping a beat. He looked closely at the holographic display. The AI scan seemed to be weak in a specific region of space, a blind spot in its sensors. It was a small chance, but it was the only one they had. "Set a course for that blind spot," Alex said. "It's our only shot." Kara nodded and quickly adjusted their course. The ship tilted slightly as it changed direction, the engine's hum rising as they pushed forward into the uncharted space. "Bonner, get ready. We might be landing soon," Alex called out, his eyes narrowing as the ship neared the blind spot. Bonner was already securing his weapon, checking the ammo supply in preparation for whatever lay ahead. The tension in the air was thick, and no one spoke. They were all aware of how close they were to the edge. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by the high-pitched sound of a sensor going off. The Tyrak had found them again. "Damn it," Kara cursed, slamming her fist against the control panel. The cloaking device was failing. The blind spot wasn't enough to keep them hidden. The Tyrak were adapting too quickly. "We've got seconds before they lock onto us," Kara shouted. "Brace yourselves." The ship lurched again, this time more violently than before. Alex's body was thrown forward, his chest slamming into the control console. His vision blurred as he struggled to regain his bearings. Alarms blared, and the ship groaned under the pressure of the impacts. "Captain," Kara yelled, her voice frantic. "They're firing again." Before Alex could respond, a massive explosion ripped through the hull, sending debris flying in all directions. The ship tilted violently, and Alex's head collided with the metal floor. Pain exploded across his skull, but he forced himself to focus. He couldn't afford to lose consciousness, not now. Not when they were so close. "We're losing power," Kara shouted, frantically working to keep the ship steady. The lights flickered as systems shut down one by one. The emergency cloaking field blinked out of existence, leaving them completely exposed. They were sitting ducks. "We need to get out of here. Now," Alex yelled, blood dripping from his forehead. He fought to rise to his feet, his vision swimming, but he didn't have time to waste. The Tyrak eye had them in its sights. Every second brought them closer to destruction. "Emergency escape pods are ready," Bonner said through gritted teeth. "We're not going down without a fight." "We're not leaving," Alex snapped. "Not unless it's the only choice left." There was a long pause before Kara spoke again, her voice softer this time. "I've got an idea," she said, a glimmer of hope in her voice. "It's risky, but we might be able to use their own sensors against them." Alex turned toward her, blood still dripping from his temple. "What do you mean?" "We overload their sensor network. Force a feedback loop. It might give us enough time to sneak in close enough to disable their weapons." Alex's mind raced. It was a long shot. If the plan failed, they'd be dead before they even knew it. But they didn't have any other choice. "Do it," Alex ordered. Kara's fingers flew over the console. "This is going to get ugly," she muttered. Seconds later, the ship shuddered once more as a series of loud explosions erupted outside. The Tyrak were firing at them with everything they had. The blinding light of their weapons reflected off the ship's hull, making it impossible to see outside. But Alex could hear it, the hum of energy building up, the rush of raw power being redirected toward the Tyrak sensors. Kara had done it. The AI's feedback loop was starting to work. Alex could feel the ship lurch once more as the Tyrak lost control of their systems. For a brief moment, the firing stopped. The enemy was disoriented, their weapons offline. It was their chance. "Now," Alex shouted. Kara gritted her teeth and pushed the ship forward. The crew scrambled to prepare for the final push. The mothership loomed in front of them, closer than ever, its massive, ominous silhouette filling the viewports. They had seconds, maybe less. "Everyone get ready," Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "This is it. We've got to get out of here," Kara yelled, struggling to regain control of the ship. The emergency lights flickered as the systems came crashing down one by one. They're going to destroy us all. Alex knew they were on borrowed time. With Harlan's betrayal, the stakes had become even higher. The countdown on the main screen flashed in bright red. 30 minutes. They had to act fast. In the midst of the chaos, Bonner's voice broke through the din of alarms. "Captain, we have a way out. There's a gap in the enemy's fleet. If we can power up the cloaking device again, we can slip past them and make it to the core." Alex nodded, his mind working furiously. A way out. But they couldn't afford to just escape. They had to finish the mission. They had to stop the Tyrak, even if it meant making the ultimate sacrifice. "Kara, can you re-engage the cloaking system?" Alex asked, his voice tight with urgency. "I can try." Kara replied, her voice strained as she worked the controls. She was sweating now, every movement precise but panicked. "But I don't know how long it will last. The Tyrak will find us again. We have maybe one shot." "Do it," Alex said. There was no time to waste. If they didn't act now, they'd be dead within minutes. Kara pressed a series of buttons, and for a brief moment, the ship shimmered as the cloaking system hummed back to life. The ship disappeared from the Tyrak sensors, but Alex knew it wouldn't be long before they discovered the anomaly. As the cloaking system hummed, Bonner's voice echoed through the comms once again. "We've got one shot at this. I'll lead the ground team to the core. You keep that ship in one piece, Alex." Alex nodded grimly. "Be careful, Bonner. We've been through too much to let it all go to waste now." With the cloaking device re-engaged, the ship slipped past the Tyrak defenses, but Alex's mind was consumed with the weight of the betrayal. Harlan had played them like pawns, leading them into a trap they hadn't seen coming. But Alex wasn't going to let that stop him. Not now. Not ever. As the ship neared the core, the team braced for what was to come. They were deep inside enemy territory, and every second felt like an eternity. But amidst the despair and the overwhelming odds, there was a flicker of hope. For all the betrayals, all the mistakes, they still had one thing that the Tyrak couldn't take from them: their will to fight. And that would be enough. The air inside the ship was thick with tension. As they neared the core of the Tyrak mothership, every second felt like a ticking clock, with the fate of not just their mission, but the entire human race hanging in the balance. Alex stood at the helm, watching the chaos unfold outside the viewport as their cloaking device struggled to keep them hidden. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat like a countdown to something inevitable. The ship's lights flickered intermittently, and the hum of the cloaking system was the only sound cutting through the silence of the cockpit. Kara's hands moved quickly across the controls, keeping the ship steady as they navigated through the labyrinth of enemy ships. "How much longer until we hit the core?" Alex asked, his voice steady but strained. He couldn't let himself crack under the pressure. "Not now." 5 minutes, Kara responded without looking up, her focus unyielding. "But they're getting close. The Tyrak won't be fooled for long." Bonner's voice crackled over the comms. "We're almost at the launch point. Get ready to breach their defenses." Alex's jaw tightened. The mission was simple on paper: make it to the core, plant the explosives, and destroy the mothership. But in reality, it was anything but. The Tyrak had laid a trap, and their allies, Harlan and the traitors who followed him, had turned what was supposed to be a strategic victory into a death sentence. But they had no choice. They couldn't turn back. "Captain, I have a signal," Kara suddenly said, her eyes widening as she typed furiously into the ship's console. "It's Harlan. He's tracking us. He knows we're here." The room seemed to hold its breath, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. "Can we shake him off?" Alex asked, his mind racing for any possible escape route. "Not without disengaging the cloaking device," Kara replied, frustration lacing her words. "If we do that, we'll be a sitting target." Alex cursed under his breath. "Then we'll have to make it count. We're going in now." With a single command, the ship sped toward the heart of the mothership, breaking through the final line of Tyrek defenses. The cloaking system flickered, and for a moment, the ship was visible, just long enough for the Tyrek to realize their mistake. In that moment of panic, the Tyrek fleet reacted. Missiles locked onto their position, but the ship was already moving too fast, dodging the incoming fire with lightning speed. The adrenaline surged through Alex's veins. He watched as the ship's shields absorbed the blasts, sparks flying across the control panel, but the ship held strong. The Tyrek had underestimated them. Again. But the countdown was still ticking down. "Bonner, now!" Alex shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. The soldiers on the ground were ready. They had one chance to reach the core. The transport ship separated from their main vessel, launching itself toward the breach point. Bonner's team was already on the move, adrenaline pumping as they scrambled for cover in the shadow of the towering Tyrek structure. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal, and explosions shook the ground beneath their feet, but nothing was going to stop them now. "We're in position." Bonner's voice crackled over the comms. "Get those explosives ready." Alex's mind raced. They were inside the beast now. There was no turning back. He had trusted Bonner with his life countless times, and he knew the team was capable. But there was always the risk of failure. A single misstep, and everything would be lost. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of more enemy fire, and Alex gritted his teeth, gripping the console. "We've got incoming," he said, his voice calm despite the panic swirling inside him. "Kara, get us in position. We can't let them stop us." Kara's fingers flew across the controls. "I'm trying, but they're overwhelming us. Their fleet is closing in." Alex had no time to waste. "Bonner, can you hold off the Tyrek long enough for us to plant the charges?" Bonner's voice was steady but filled with urgency. "We'll buy you time, but you've got to make it count." The team on the ground was running out of time. The Tyrek defenses were relentless, and every step forward felt like a battle against an impenetrable wall. Bonner led his team through narrow corridors, navigating the twists and turns of the alien structure, the walls pulsating with strange, ominous energy. It was like the mothership itself was alive, and it was fighting back. Alex watched the countdown on the main screen. 5 minutes, he said, his voice grim. "We're running out of time, Bonner. Do what you have to, but make it fast." Bonner's answer was a grunt of determination. "We'll plant the charges, Captain. You just make sure we have a way out." The team reached the core, a massive room filled with thrumming energy. It was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Alien technology so advanced, it seemed almost magical. But there was no time for awe. They had to destroy it. They had to destroy everything the Tyrek had built. "Plant the explosives," Bonner ordered, his voice clipped. He could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge. It was about stopping the Tyrek from wiping out humanity. As the team worked to plant the charges, explosions echoed through the hallways. The Tyrek were closing in, and the time was slipping away faster than anyone had imagined. The countdown hit 3 minutes. "Charges set," one of the soldiers called out, his voice a mixture of relief and terror. "We need to get out now." Bonner didn't waste a second. "Fall back. Move, now." The team turned, sprinting down the corridor, just as a blast rocked the structure. The walls trembled, and the ground beneath their feet shifted. The Tyrek were coming for them, and they were coming fast. Alex's fingers tightened around the control panel. "Kara, we're almost there. Can we get them out?" "I'm trying." Kara replied, her voice a strained whisper. "But they've blocked the exit. I can't open the damn doors." Bonner's voice came through, grim but resolute. "We'll make it. We just need a little more time." The final assault was underway, and the explosion that would end it all was about to happen. The fate of the galaxy rested on the success of this mission. Alex knew it. Kara knew it. And Bonner knew it. "Get ready, Captain," Kara warned. "The mothership's going to blow." The sound of distant explosions rumbled like thunder as Alex's hands gripped the console tighter. His heart pounded louder with each passing second, and the countdown reached its final moments. They were on the verge of victory, but only if they could survive the final blast. The air inside the ship was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and burnt metal, and Alex could feel the vibrations beneath his feet as they raced through the darkened corridors of the mothership. The countdown timer flashed ominously on the control panel. 2 minutes. Every second felt like an eternity. His palms were slick with sweat, his mind working a mile a minute as he tried to anticipate the next move. Kara was at the helm, her face bathed in the glow of the ship's systems. Her hands flew across the console, her eyes darting between the various screens. The quiet hum of the ship was broken only by the occasional explosion, shaking the vessel as the Tyrek fleet intensified their attacks. They had been caught in the midst of chaos, but they couldn't back down now. Not after everything they had fought for. "We're almost there, Alex." Kara's voice was steady, but he could hear the strain beneath it. "The escape route is clear, but we've got one last obstacle." "I know," Alex replied, gripping the edge of the console. "The Tyrek won't let us go without a fight, but we've come too far to fail now." His mind kept flashing back to the team on the ground. Bonner and the others were right in the thick of it, planting the explosives that would finally destroy the Tyrek mothership. But Alex knew the mission had a price, and it wasn't one he was sure he was ready to pay. "Kara," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Are we going to make it? Is there a way out for them?" Kara glanced at him briefly, her expression hardened but sympathetic. "We have to hope so, but we don't have much time." The ship shook violently, throwing them both off balance. Alex's heart skipped a beat as the warning lights flashed red across the console. The Tyrek were closing in on them, their weapons locked on the ship. If they couldn't get out now, they would be sitting ducks. "Bonner, do you copy?" Alex called over the comms, his voice urgent. He could hear the distant sounds of gunfire and explosions in the background, the sounds of desperate fighting. "We're almost to the extraction point." Bonner's voice crackled through the static. "But we got company. The Tyrek are everywhere." Alex's stomach clenched. He knew Bonner wouldn't say it outright, but there was no way they were going to make it out without casualties. The enemy was relentless, and their escape route was getting smaller by the second. It was only a matter of time before they were overwhelmed. "We're coming for you," Alex said, his voice firm, despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "Just hold on a little longer." Kara steered the ship expertly, dodging incoming fire as she maneuvered them through the wreckage of the Tyrek fleet. The mothership was burning in the distance, the explosion still a minute away. Every second felt like it could be their last, but there was no turning back now. Bonner's voice came through again, but this time there was an unmistakable urgency in his tone. "Alex, we've got a problem. The Tyrek have activated a self-destruct sequence. We don't have much time. The charges are planted, but we're trapped in here." The words hit Alex like a blow to the chest. The Tyrek had set the ship to explode, and it was going to take everyone with it. He could hear the sounds of frantic gunfire and shouting in the background. Bonner was trying to protect his team, but it was becoming clear that not everyone was going to make it out alive. "No," Alex shouted, banging his fist against the console. "You have to get out of there." "We can't," Bonner replied, his voice grim. "The exit's blocked. We're not going anywhere unless someone makes a sacrifice." Alex's throat tightened. He knew what Bonner was suggesting, and the thought of it made his stomach turn. They had come so far. They couldn't give up now. "You're not asking anyone to." Alex started, but Bonner cut him off. "It's the only way, Alex. You know it. We're not going to make it out unless someone stays behind to make sure the charges go off. Someone has to trigger the destruction from the inside." The weight of the words hit Alex like a sledgehammer. Bonner was offering to stay behind, but Alex couldn't accept that. He couldn't let him sacrifice himself. Not like this. No, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. I won't let you. I don't have a choice, Captain, Bonner replied, his voice resolute. We've all known what this mission would cost. If I stay behind, the rest of you have a chance to survive. You fought too hard to let it all go to waste. There was silence for a moment, and Alex's heart broke for his friend. They had been through so much together, and now, with the finish line in sight, it was all slipping through their fingers. But there was no time to argue. The countdown had reached 30 seconds. Alex, Bonner's voice came through, steady as always. Tell my family I love them. Alex closed his eyes, a lump rising in his throat. You're not going to die, Bonner. We'll get you out of there. I swear it. But Bonner's voice was already fading, drowned out by the roar of explosions. The connection was lost. For a long moment, Alex just sat there, staring at the blank screen. The silence felt like a weight, pressing down on him. He had failed. They all had. But he couldn't give up. Not when they were so close. Captain, Kara said, her voice soft but firm. We have to go. Now. Alex blinked, shaking his head as if waking from a trance. The timer on the screen was nearly at 0, and the ship was running out of time. There was no more room for hesitation. Without another word, he stood and rushed to the cockpit. Kara had already locked onto the extraction point. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling them forward as the mothership began to collapse in on itself. The shockwave hit first, shaking the entire ship as the explosion tore through the heart of the Tyrek fleet. It was like the universe itself had fractured. Alex could see the massive fireball expanding in the distance, and his chest tightened as he thought of Bonner. Goodbye, my friend, Alex whispered, his heart heavy with the weight of the sacrifice. The Tyrek were gone. The mission was complete. The war was over. But victory came at a terrible price. As they broke through the debris and headed for the safety of space, Alex couldn't help but feel the bitterness of the victory. They had won, but they had lost so much more. The stars outside the ship shimmered like distant jewels, their cold, silent beauty a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. Alex sat in the cockpit, staring out at the endless expanse of space, his thoughts heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. Bonner was gone. The team had lost one of its best, and the price of victory felt far too high. Yet the mission had succeeded. The Tyrek were defeated. The galaxy was free. But freedom came with a hole in his heart, a hole that would never fully heal. Captain, we've got a signal coming in. Kara's voice broke through the silence, pulling Alex from his thoughts. He turned to see her looking at the console, her expression unreadable. It's from the fleet. They're asking for a status report. Alex nodded slowly, his throat tight. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. They had done what they came to do, but now the real work began. The galaxy had been saved, but rebuilding it would be no easy task. And the people they had fought for, those who had suffered under the Tyrek's reign, needed leadership. They needed hope. And maybe, just maybe, they needed Alex to give them that hope. He tapped the console, sending a secure reply to the fleet. This is Captain Alex Hunter of the Resistance. Mission accomplished. The Tyrek mothership has been destroyed, and the enemy fleet is in retreat. We are returning to the designated coordinates for debriefing. A moment of silence passed before a voice crackled through the speaker. Captain Hunter, it's good to hear from you. You've done it. The galaxy owes you and your team more than we could ever repay. Alex swallowed hard, hearing the sincerity in the voice, but also the weight of the unspoken words. He knew that they had lost too much, and no amount of thanks would bring back those they had sacrificed. We've lost people, Alex replied, his voice steady but filled with grief. A lot of good people, but we've won, and that's what matters. We'll honor them, Captain, the voice said quietly. Their sacrifice won't be forgotten. You've saved the galaxy." The words felt hollow. How could they honor Bonner and the others when their sacrifice had come at such a great cost? Alex couldn't shake the images of the team fighting, the explosions, the moments of hope dashed in an instant. The victory was sweet, but it was marred by the pain of loss. And no amount of praise could change that. "Understood," Alex said, his voice rough. "We'll be in touch once we've completed our debrief." Hunter out. He leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. What now? The war was over, but their fight was far from finished. The galaxy was in ruins. The Tyrak had taken so much. The people were broken, and it would take years to rebuild what had been lost. But there was one thing Alex knew for sure. They couldn't give up. Not now. Kara looked at him, her expression softening. "You okay?" Alex nodded slowly, but the pain in his eyes was impossible to miss. "I'll be fine. We'll all be fine. We've made it through the worst of it. Now, we rebuild." He glanced at the view outside, watching as the debris from the Tyrek fleet drifted by. The battle was over, but there was still so much work to do. The resistance had to be reformed. The galaxy needed leaders who could rebuild what the Tyrak had torn apart, and Alex knew that it couldn't be done without the sacrifices of people like Bonner. "We'll honor them," Kara said softly, as if reading his thoughts. "They're not gone. They'll live on in the new world we're going to build." Alex smiled faintly, but the sadness never quite left his eyes. "Yeah, they will." The ship continued its journey through space, heading for the rendezvous point. They were returning home, but home had changed. The world they once knew was gone. There was no going back. But that didn't mean they couldn't make something new, something better. As they approached the fleet's location, Alex's thoughts drifted back to the team, to the people they had lost. Bonner's face flashed in his mind. That final conversation, the quiet resignation in his voice. They had fought together, built together, and now they were separated by the cruel reality of war. But even in death, Bonner had given them the gift of survival, and Alex would make sure that their sacrifice wasn't in vain. The rendezvous was brief but necessary. The fleet was waiting, ready to take stock of the situation and begin the rebuilding efforts. Alex knew the work ahead would be grueling, but there was a sense of purpose in the air. They had done something extraordinary. They had toppled the Tyrek, and now it was time to pick up the pieces and build a future from the ashes. Once the formalities were out of the way, Alex found himself standing in a quiet room, staring out at the stars once again. Kara entered quietly, standing beside him for a moment before speaking. "You've done it, Alex," she said softly. "You saved us all." Alex shook his head, his eyes never leaving the stars. "We did it together. It was never just me." Kara smiled, a small, sad smile. "Bonner would be proud of you." Alex's heart twisted at the thought of his friend. He had lost so much, but he had gained something too, something he hadn't realized he needed until now. Hope. The war was over, and the galaxy was free. But the real work began now. They had to rebuild, and they had to do it together. "We'll make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain," Alex said quietly, his voice steady with resolve. "We'll make a new world for them, for everyone." And in that moment, Alex knew that, despite everything they had lost, they had something worth fighting for. A new dawn was breaking on the horizon, and it was up to them to build a future from the ashes of the past. Together, they would rebuild a galaxy that had been torn apart. Together, they would honor the fallen and forge a path to a brighter, better future. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, but they had proven that they were capable of anything. And no matter what came next, Alex knew one thing for sure. They wouldn't stop fighting. The fight for peace, for freedom, and for the memory of those they had lost was just beginning. And they would fight until the very end.